life at USC? Well, we're the women's beach volleyball 4-time national champions, but like that's not what people come here for. They come here for defensive line splashes in the transfer portal, and USC was like the Dodgers in the National League Championship Series, swing and a miss with Derek Harmon at Michigan State. And, obviously people are really upset. They're really frustrated. I mean, they should be. Like, that was a big one. We wrote about it at Trojans Wire. Like, they really needed this one. And when I write about this, or when I say it on a program such as this here at the Voice of College Football, if you go out and say you really need X and you don't get X, you can't, after the fact, you can't just say, well, just you win some, lose some, not that big a deal. No. You can't walk it back. Like, that's a stinging defeat. It's a stinging defeat. And the fact that it happens at the hands of Oregon yet again, like that just twists the knife a little more for the USC fan base. And of course, the fact that Oregon's joining USC in the Big Ten, as opposed to being in another conference, that adds to the weight of it. And so, it really creates an interesting conversation, not just among USC fans, but among all college football fans, is that when we look at these transfer portal movements and these transfer portal choices, when you look at Oregon, the natural inclination is to say, well, Phil Knight's Nike money, like that's just a heavyweight, a powerhouse, and USC couldn't compete with that. And there's some truth there. And I want to affirm up front that when USC fans and maybe other non-Oregon fans, probably also Washington fans, are aligned with USC fans in this regard, when they say, Phil Knight's money is supreme and Oregon's NIL situation is such a juggernaut, there's truth there. All right. So I want to affirm that point. But where this discussion gets more complicated and where there needs to be a little bit more nuance is, and I wrote about this over the weekend at Trojans Wire, I just want to make sure people think it's not the only reason these recruits and these transfer portal prospects are making these decisions. It's a big reason. If you wanted to say it's the main reason, it's a central reason, I'm not here to argue with that. I'm not here to fight against that. But where I say, whoa, pump the brakes, is when people say it's the only reason. Oh, he just went there for the money. Oregon had a bigger bag. That's it. No, it wasn't it. I mean, it certainly helped. It's certainly leverage. It's certainly a big factor. Not arguing against any of that. But there are other things. And like, one thing, when USC and Oregon go head to head and Oregon wins, which is, has usually been happening. That's happened the majority of the time the past few years. People will say, Matt, Dan Lanning didn't beat Lincoln Riley. This was, Daddy Phil coming in with his bag of bucks. And again, NIL is pretty darn important, and Oregon has marketed itself, presented itself in an attractive way in things that go way beyond Dan Lanning. That's true. There's a lot of truth to these claims. I'm just kind of trying to carve truth into certain buckets and make sure that we're getting a fuller story and a fuller picture. That stuff is important. So I'm not dismissing it. I'm not denying it, certainly. But when people say, well, Dan Lanning didn't beat out Lincoln Riley, actually, yes, he did. And there are a couple layers of the onion that need to be peeled away here. One is that if Oregon had Mark Helfrich or Willie Taggart as head coach, no, these NIL victories would not be happening. Okay, it does matter who's captaining the ship. It does matter who's overseeing the football operations. Helfrich couldn't keep Oregon afloat after the majestic Marcus Mariota 2014 season, the run to the national championship game against Urban Meyer and Ohio State. After that, he tanked. Like, he could not sustain the program after, he made great use of what Chip Kelly gave him. When that handing of the baton occurred, Helfrich maxed out with what he got, with the groceries that Chip Kelly gave him. But when he had to do his own shopping, he had nothing. He was a washed up pitcher throwing 88-mile-an-hour meatballs center cut down the middle of the plate, getting swatted out of the park 500 feet. And then Willie Taggart, taking over after Helfrich, couldn't get it done. And so if those guys, either one, if they were in charge in Eugene, we wouldn't be seeing this. So Dan Lanning does have a certain degree of competence here. He certainly has a certain level of responsibility and therefore credit for what Oregon's doing. Like, he is definitely making this program look attractive so that when Oregon does come in with the NIL offer, recruits get a full picture and a full package that they think is appealing. So money's there as a primary thing. Again, not arguing with that, but it's just, Dan Lanning's peripheral to this. No, he isn't. The coach really matters. And so the final piece of this puzzle, Mark, to lay out for viewers here at the Voice of College Football, is that it's not only Dan Lanning doing something good, it's also Lincoln Riley failing. And let's now be very careful in explaining this. And USC fans might say, wait a minute, Lincoln Riley's been doing really good things this year, remaking his defensive staff, bringing aboard Eric Henderson, Coach Henny, and the dog work. Yes, Lincoln Riley is making good moves. He is making good decisions. With some of these guys in the portal, I'm not talking about Derek Harmon, but I'm talking about some other guys. He hasn't overpaid for guys, and Isaiah Rakes didn't seem to be measuring up. See ya, good decision there as well. So Lincoln Riley is making good choices. But when we look at this Derek Harmon situation, and we look at this Derek Harmon failure, a battle that USC really needed to win but didn't, you can't really blame this on Eric Henderson because he's new, he's just on staff, he can sell the program, but he's just been at USC for 3 months. You can't really put it on him. You can't really put it on Danton Lynn. Lincoln Riley has put them in this position, but they haven't coached a game yet. They are on the right track, but they don't have, just by the simple fact that they're new, they don't have a USC track record yet. I mean, doing good things, but nothing in terms of on the field coaching, nothing in terms of an actual game, an actual season. They just have to compile a resume. So even though Lincoln Riley has made lots of good choices this year and he's made lots of good restructuring decisions, this Derek Harmon failure still falls on him, right? Partly because you can't really put it on any of the members of the defensive staff, but also if we want to really connect the dots here, this failure to land Derek Harmon is traced to 2 basic things. One, Oregon is closer to winning a national championship than USC. Now, Trojan fans might hate me for saying that, but that's the truth. And we deal with the truth at Trojans Wire. We certainly try to deal with the truth here at the Voice of College Football. Would any reasonable person say, no, Oregon's not closer to a national championship right now than USC? I don't think you can credibly make that case. Oregon's just been getting a higher level of recruiting, higher level in the transfer portal, has Dylan Gabriel, a guy with several years of proven results in college football. Miller Moss could be great. I'm not saying he won't be, but just if you're comparing Miller Moss to Dylan Gabriel, one guy is more proven than the other. Didn't say better, more proven. One guy has proved more so far in his collegiate career than the other. So when you put all that together, Oregon is closer right now than USC. Now that could change. Maybe USC beats LSU in week 1. Oregon steps on a rake. Could be in late September, USC will be closer to a national title than Oregon will, okay? But right now, it's Oregon's closer. And so when we go full circle and bring this back to the beginning, Derek Harmon, he might have chosen Oregon and Dan Lanning over Lincoln Riley because of the bag, because of the NIL. That might have been the main thing. But if it was a tie or if it was a close call, when you factor in the NIL and the incentives and all those things, I'm sure that a part of Derek Harmon's calculus was that I can be a piece on a national championship puzzle, or I can be a piece on a college football playoff puzzle if I go to Oregon rather than USC. And I might get NFL level development from Coach Henney, but I could get NFL level development in Eugene and play for a national championship. And that all goes back to Lincoln Riley wasting that 2023 season, running it back with Alex Grinch, running it back with Dante Williams, and one of the things that you remember here, Mark, I mean, like, you were part of this. I see Tim, he's trying to get on. He kind of briefly popped in, but then we lost the connection with him. But Tim seems to be about to join us here. All of us in the 2023 off season, before the 2023 Pac-12 football season, we all said wins are going to sell recruits. Winning is the ultimate proof of concept. Winning is the ultimate argument that you make on the trail. Winning is the ultimate case you make in the portal. And so Lincoln Riley, while making great decisions since the end of the 2023 season, he is still paying the price for the decisions that he made in early 2023. That is what led to the failed 2023 season. That is why Oregon is closer to a national championship right now than USC is. That's undeniably a part. I'm not saying it's the main driver, maybe, but it's certainly a part of why Derek Harmon looked at Eugene, he looked at LA, and he said, I'm going to go to Dan Lanning instead of Lincoln Riley because Oregon's closer to where it's supposed to be than USC is right now. So long answer, but like, you can see everyone who's watching here at the Voice of College Football, you can see how nuanced this is. You can see all the layers of the onion. You can see all, the different specific details and pressure points and competing factors. It's not just Daddy Phil's money. I mean, that has a lot to do with it. Again, I've never argued with that or questioned that. I'm just trying to make sure we don't think that's the only thing, that it's just that and nothing else, and everything else is irrelevant. That's the main thing I want to stress here for the audience at the Voice of College Football.
Tim Prangley, everyone. Trojans Wire, and of course, host here at the Voice of College Football SC. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Just listening to Matt. I don't agree with everything you said, but appreciate his thoughts on the whole thing. I think you did hit on one very clear note that it is not just the money. I totally agree. I've had at least, more than one parent say that just the whole process and the recruiting, they got it going on up there at Oregon. I know as a St. John Bosco guy that it just seems like St. John Bosco is just going right up to Eugene these days. They just got Peyton Woodyard, the last one from that really great class heading up, going with going Mateo. So, I mean, I would tell you this though, Matt, are they closer? Because I'm not sold on their coaching staff. See, here's the difference. You're right. They had the roster. I would agree. We got the coaching staff. That's where I'm going to go. Dan Lanning hasn't shown me yet that he is an elite coach yet. He has had the best roster in the Pac-12 for a while, but that's because he's had the best roster for a while. He didn't get that. That was started by Mario Cristobal, who got that in place for him. And so to say that, you did name Willie Taggart. So Taggart wasn't there long enough to recruit anything really. And then with Dan Lanning, with Mario Cristobal, he was killing it in recruiting. He was doing very well with overpaying with Uncle Phil's money. It is not the only reason why they're landing players, but I would say in this case and what's going on, let's face it, there was absolutely a push. It was made very clear that I'm not sure, I don't want to misquote it, but from what I think I heard is that he literally had an agent kind of working for him in order to get to work through the NIL and to work through everything. This kid was very savvy in what he was doing. If I got my information correct about Harmon, there's nothing wrong with that. But the point to say that it's that Dan Lanning, his cunning and his high stakes and his great coaching and his exceptional recruiting. No, this, I believe, did come down to a hell of a lot of money. I really do. And as far as, they're closer, I do agree. Their roster is much closer in a much better position to win a national championship this year.
I mean,
It seemed
Tim,
like
I'm not
it seemed like they're paying. They're not just paying Matt. They're not just competing. They are paying way over the top for these guys. So if they're paying even money or pretty close, then I'd go with your assumption that it's not, the money. But when they're paying way over the asking price, everyone else and everyone backs off. I don't know if that's recruiting. I think that's just outpaying everybody.
Okay,
that's just
I do want to say, just in terms of X's and O's, so that's a separate deal. In terms of X's and O's, yes, you're right. Dan Lanning has not yet proven himself at an elite level. And like Oregon should have blown USC out in my mind in terms of just like the talent level between last year's two teams, and it was in Eugene at night at Alex Grinch. Grinch wasn't actually coaching in that game; he had been fired. But you had an interim USC staff, cobbled together. That should have been, if Dan Lanning was squeezing every ounce of potential out of Oregon, or the Ducks would have absolutely thrashed USC. But it was just a 9-point win. So I'm right there with you in terms of, Oregon not winning championships. It didn't win the Pac-12 last year, despite that roster. I'm right there with you in terms of X's and O's that Dan Lanning has not yet proved himself, but he's really good at everything else. All the other parts of a coach's job description. And Lincoln Riley, while being an X and O genius, that one decision to stick with Alex Grinch and run it back in 2023, that one decision just wasted a year, and it set USC back. And that proof of concept, winning games, which USC did have in 2022, couldn't replicate it in 2023. And the Trojans, I think, are still paying that price for what happened in 2023. And it's unfortunate, but it's there. And so, in terms of, what you and a few other people are saying about how close USC and Oregon are to a national championship, I think in 2025, it could be that USC will be closer precisely because of that coaching staff. But at a certain point, you have to have good enough dudes, and you have to have enough good dudes, both the depth and the quality. And missing out on Derek Harmon does leave USC short in terms of both depth and quality on that defensive line.
Yeah, there is no doubt. Not just on Harmon, whatever the weird situation with Toya was, whatever that was, Kristen Miller doing his little dance with whatever that was, Williams from TCU. But I'm really beginning to wonder that, is USC willing to overpay for these positions? That's all I'm saying. It is the absolute position of need. Bless some breaks. Did you once hear me say, if you've been listening to our show, I've been saying we absolutely need to get someone for that nose tackle. I'm not sure if you're just popping in, taking your snipes randomly, but no one here is saying actually I will say don't freak out. You know why? Because it hasn't kicked off yet. We don't know what's going on. I will tell you though, that if they cannot get some size and depth inside, it's going to be a long year. And I'm circling right now. I'm just circling that Michigan game, because if we have somebody sub 300 pounds playing nose guard for us, we are going to be in deep trouble. That, if you don't have that nose tackle right there up in front, that point of attack, it's going to be a long day in Ann Arbor. I will tell you that. Is it time to freak out? We could be like Bless and Breaks and freak out every single time and be negative all the time. That's great. But being negative all the time is not being objective, right? You don't have to be negative to be these people. Sometimes these fantasies that you have to be negative to be objective. No, you could also just be objective. And the fact is if you were paying attention, USC may get a lot better with Bryce Foster. Where I had worries about the offensive line, they land Bryce Foster. They pull that guy in. I'm telling you, that changes the dynamic of the offensive line, and that's a whole different conversation. USC is not overpaying, and I mean really overpaying for a nose tackle. I think a lot of these guys are asking, and SC's saying, we don't need you that bad. Because none of these guys, by the way, none of the names we're naming, Matt, are going to be NFL day one, guys. These guys are not, none of these guys are spectacular. They're just, solid guys. I'm not saying they're not. They would be a difference maker on this line, but they're not going to be a difference maker overall. And so to pay, whatever it is, 600, 800, whatever it's going to be to get these guys is just a waste of money, in my opinion.
I've been ready to jump on the point that Tim just made because I think it's a good one. That I think because of the transfer portal being new to college football in regards to its magnitude and its volume, I think it brings that free agency excitement to college football. Some people hate it, some people love it. If your team's benefiting, of course, you enjoy it. But there's a lot of attention given to these transactions. And I think a lot of these players are overplayed as being high end commodities. And there's very few of them, especially in the spring market. Derek Harmon, it's not like he was an all Big Ten performer along the defensive front. He was not last year. He's a solid player. He started every game for Michigan State the last 2 years, turned in 30 and 40 tackles, made very few disruptive plays in the backfield, 3.5 tackles for loss the last 2 seasons. Really good player, really good piece that he could have contributed to this USC front. But I just think that I'm not talking about necessarily either one of you, but that the fan bases, not just USC fan bases across the board are making too much out of a lot of these additions when there's only 6 to 8 to 10 players out there that are truly all conference potential type players. And Derek Harmon is probably not one of them. Now, he could continue to blossom. He's had, again, 2 very solid seasons at Michigan State. He could wind up on an all-conference team at the end of 2024. That's possible, but he's not Bear Alexander of 2024.
Yeah, I agreed. It's where it's hurting. What I hear Matt saying is that it's an absolute position of need. It just is. And you know what? Here's the thing, though. I'm not going to crack on the staff because it's not like they haven't attempted to fill that position. It's just I think that now they're maybe the failure. If there is a failure, Matt, it was maybe early on, not reading the room, not just getting a solid piece in place. Maybe that's where earlier in this whole process, getting in and not really going for some of these other players to go, hey, look, we just need someone 315, 325. There's going to be a space here in the middle to give us some depth and to be able to stop if someone wants to run right at us. They can plug that middle of the field. I get that part of it, but overall, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm looking at our roster. I'm looking at the roster additions that USC has this year, and there is a big spotlight on that nose tackle position. There's no doubt about it. But it wasn't like there weren't attempts made. I just don't think that SC's in a position. And if you look at the high school class they're bringing in, they are going right after defensive line and getting top quality 5-star guys. I don't think they want to blow all their money on a mediocre for 1 year when they can save that money to throw towards a class next year. I just don't think it's good. This is business now, right? It's bad business to throw money away like that.
Well, and this brings up the point that when we see players transfer out of programs. Obviously, if the transfer is really elite, then that's a loss. That's a gut punch for a program. But a lot of the time, and this applies to basketball as much as football, when you see certain people or players transfer out of a program, the initial reaction is not frustration. It's, oh, that means an upgrade's coming in the other way through the portal. One guy's going out, then we're going to get someone even better coming in. And I haven't talked about this before, but like when Isaiah Rakes left, my initial reaction wasn't, darn it. It was, oh, they have someone lined up. Coach Henne has someone lined up. And it didn't happen. So that, that raises some real concerns for me that, okay, when Isaiah Rakes left, I was thinking, well, okay, so surely they have someone coming in from the other side in the spring portal window. And now we're sitting here and no. So when something like that happens, that like someone dropped the ball somewhere. I mean, and exactly where it was or when it was, we don't know, but like that is not how things are supposed to work. When a guy, like you're bringing in a guy from Texas A&M, space filler in the middle, and he transfers back out 3 months later. And, my thought was when the last time we gathered for a show, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, my thought was, this has to mean that Rakes just wasn't measuring up on the field in spring ball, because why else would you transfer out 3 months later? It just doesn't make sense. If you bother to come to a school, if you bother to transfer to a school, and you're leaving 3 months later, that to me, the most logical response to any of that is that you just weren't measuring up, and you need to go where you're going to be assured of getting playing time. That was my initial thought with Isaiah Rakes, but now I find myself questioning that, because this wasn't a case of, well, we got better guys on the roster. Isaiah, you're not going to see the field very much. No, there isn't an incoming transfer prospect, and USC is still shorthanded, such that if we lived in a world where Isaiah Rakes was on this roster, I mean, he'd have to play, just because he would need to be part of a rotation up front. So that is the really concerning thing to me. And again, I don't know exactly where or when any of these things happen, but at some point in that larger process, that larger reality, it's not the way things are supposed to happen. We can all agree on that.
Yeah. Well, when that happened, actually, my first guess was he looked over at Bear and went, and he tried to do a Bear, and SC said, well, bye. And again, we'll never know, Matt. That's off of zero. I have zero information. That was my gut feeling. It was weird for him to come in, and like that article, on Trojans Wire, he was talking up, how much he loved, Rakes just sitting there talking about, she loved Lynn's system, loved why he came, and he was loving everything early in camp. And all of a sudden something changed, obviously, really quickly. We probably will never know what that was, but at the end of the day, the issue is SC is looking very light, not talented. There's a lot of talent that they're going to have there, but they're looking really light in the middle of that defensive line now. And if God forbid Bear Alexander goes down, it might be again, you're going to see teams run right at the middle of that field if that happens. We have really good talent, but they're younger and they don't have the size on yet. They don't have that college strength yet. But we're going to see. There are some big, strong dudes that are freshmen that are coming in, but would they be ready? Most likely not. Do they have the size? Are any of them 320? No, they are not. So those are your holes, and that's your issue, and that's what USC is going to have to figure out.
Our buddy Will ND is here. Will, thank you so much for being here and being a member. As a Notre Dame fan, folks, as a Notre Dame fan, Will has been a great friend of the show and the channels and everything for quite some time. Congratulating Tim, Matt, and myself on our 100th show. So let's see, Matt, we are 4 weeks shy of 2 years when we got together for the first time live to launch our USC live show that Tim aptly has joined and then also rebranded, knowing what USC commodities are out there. So Tim keeping us in check at every pass. Well,
and if you really want to, there were 30 other Trojan Conquest shows before. So if you want to add those on, this 130, but it's 100 on the Monday that you and Matt started, correct?
Okay. So. All right. If you can keep track of all of that, folks, we're just happy to be here every Monday. And then, of course, Tim and Matt get together every Friday. And we are steamrolling ahead during the off season into May now. And when Matt and I jumped on, Tim, the graphic concerning Reggie Bush's 8th Heisman, was that just left over from a few weeks ago? I didn't know if you wanted to continue to your off-season celebration.
No, I'm good with that for a while. I think maybe later on we start talking about it'd be fun to talk about which game he's going to come out. That could be interesting speculation a little bit down the road, but it's going to be special. I've been hammering it. Our channel's been hammering it. A lot of people have been hammering it. I know Matt has over on Trojans Wire. So it's just about time, and when the thing that kills me the most about people is that they're talking about all these other different things. It literally, the one thing that I kept saying for well over a year was it's not against, if it's against the rules, fine. But if the rule is based on a law that's unconstitutional, then it never should have been a law. So never should have been a rule. So just stick with that. And it's easy to see everyone else coming in for the rule. We're saying, yeah, but what about ours? What about this? What about that? if it sticks that same premise, if it's really literally a marketing agent doing the NIL stuff that's being done right now, that the Supreme Court said basically is unconstitutional, then have at it. Sure, let's remove everything. But the other people that have broken law rules and NCAA rules in the past, and one thing very clear that, even the major outlets get wrong. Be very clear when anyone ever says this to you Trojans. USC didn't pay Reggie Bush and his family a house to come to USC. All of these allegations that were made were after he'd already been there for about over a year and a half. So it was never about USC getting him to come to the school, right? It was the fact he was there, and the people that were involved had nothing to do with USC. Zero to do with USC.
Before we get to this comment from Roy, I want to piggyback off of that because it's a good segue into our all-time program rankings that we are unveiling this week at the Voice of College Football over on the main channel. So we delivered, to start the series, the Pac-12. We put a final bow on the Pac-12. Some people were like, why are you addressing the Pac-12? Well, it's an all-time program ranking, and now the metrics are all sealed and they're finished. And this is not a spit at the wall kind of like Alabama's probably number one, maybe Ohio State, maybe Notre Dame's number two, and then we'll put Ohio State 3. No, it's not that business. No, winning percentage, major bowl wins, national championships, conference championships. We even put a metric in there that is conference championship percentage, meaning it's not fair to rate the ACC beginning in 1953 and Florida State joins in 1992 and others joined in 2004, a percentage of conference championships since you've been in the league, national championships, first round picks, overall NFL draft selections, All-Americans, award winners at every position, Heisman Trophy wins. We looked at the winning percentage of all these teams in the college football playoff era, the 21st century and post 1970, in addition to all time. So we're not just making things up and just guessing. No, it's a pretty radical look at that took hours and hours and hours and hours of labor of love to put these together. So we're going to roll out every conference, then we're going to put them all together, make our comparisons. Do I promote it as a perfect system? Not in any such way. There are things that if I had a limitless database, I would add to it, but it's a pretty comprehensive look at these programs all time. And we did post the Pac-12 today, and the contingent here would be pretty pleased with the results, I believe.
I think when it comes to the Pac-12, there's literally no competition for USC.
No, there's not.
Zero. And I mean zero.
We all posted the AP poll points.
Yeah.
It is zero. There is a UCLA Washington battle for a tier way below.
Yeah. And I would, again, you can, everyone values things differently. And usually I think it does kind of tend to sway towards their team strength. But, like with me, I really, you and I, the only thing, I love the rankings. The only thing you and I ever argue on, Mark, is I think that there should be a lot more weight given to major bowl victories. Next to national championships, major bowl victories to me should be the biggest ones, because I agree in lately, it's not the same thing with some of these bowl games. So overall bowls don't mean much. But when we talk about the ones that get designated as the BCS bowls, the New Year's Day bowls, the New Year's Six bowls, the games that are meant put usually conference champion against conference champion for decades, those to me, because who knows what USC would have done if they were in the Big Ten, in the 60s and 70s. Who knows what USC's record would have been back then? Who knows what Ohio State's record would have been in the ACC? We can mix and match these things, because I do know that every year, if you do look at those 60s and 70s and 80s, well, actually just forever, USC, look at USC's non-conference schedules that they've been scheduling since forever. And I'll put that up against anybody in college football. I think USC has done a great job historically of going across the country. They played Alabama 8 times. They played Ohio State outside of the Rose Bowl, about 5-6 times, something like that, 8 times. So USC is consistently gone out and played the best teams, in the country. And then you have some schools historically that have not done that. And so it's kind of hard to say, well, this team has a higher win percentage when teams don't play the same schedules. But I get it. Like your big point being was you don't have the time or the money or whatever.
This is my database
to crunch all of the numbers in order to do that. So I would definitely, because here's my pushback. Yes, Michigan, Ohio State have amazing, and Notre Dame have amazing win totals and win percentages. But what are their bowl records? That's why that's all I throw out there for discussion. Is all I say.
No, I completely agree with you. I would love to add a strength of schedule component, and also consider, Tim, I am giving 3 times more weight to major bowl victories than other bowl victories.
Okay.